Why do kids have meltdowns? Are they the same as tantrums? And should you ignore them? Hi, I'm Dr. Andy Kahn. I'm a licensed psychologist. And today, I'm going to answer some of the internet's biggest questions about meltdowns in kids. Why do kids have meltdowns? Kids have meltdowns for a variety of reasons, and they can vary from kid to kid. The key thing to think about is a meltdown is occurring when your child is having these extreme emotional reactions. They're at a point of being overwhelmed or feeling like they don't have control over a situation. A child can have this as a result of something being really overwhelming to their senses, or it can be a situation that feels completely out of control to them. And they get to that tipping point where they lose control of what they're doing. What's the difference between a meltdown and a tantrum? So let's start with a tantrum. Now, a tantrum is a behavior that your child is showing in response to something that they want. So your child is trying to take control of the situation intentionally. So the example is you're going through the checkout line in the supermarket and your child has got their eyes on candy or gum or whatever's there. And they are going to start acting out in such a way with the goal of getting something from you. As soon as you give them that candy, calm down, back down to baseline. It's what we call giving them reinforcement. Similarly, if you gave them a consequence or did something different, it could change their behavior. In a meltdown, this is when your child loses control of their emotions and behavior. What they're doing has nothing to do with the choices you're making in that moment, within reason. Obviously, reinforcement consequences, meaning giving rewards or threatening to take something away, this is not going to be effective in those moments. So to sum up, in a tantrum, your child is in control of their behavior. They have intention to get certain things from you, and you can actually affect their behavior. In a meltdown, your child is not under control, and what you do typically isn't going to stop that meltdown easily. Why does my child have meltdowns during homework? So homework can be super hard for kids in general, but for kids with learning and thinking differences like dyslexia or ADHD, there are a lot of barriers to learning and to getting engaged in doing homework the right way. First and foremost, your child could come home at the end of a long day and they're done. Their focus and attention has been completely spent during the course of the day. Another possibility is your child wasn't paying attention or wasn't able to focus, not because of something they were doing wrong, but because it just wasn't something they were able to do in that moment. All of this means that homework is a really common trigger for kids to have meltdowns. How do I help my child during a meltdown? So this is super important because when your child is in the midst of a meltdown, remember, they're not in control of their body and their emotions. The most important thing you can do first is to keep the space around them safe. Make sure your child isn't in danger around things that they might bump into, things they might throw, things they might be hitting or hurting. Keeping your child safe is job one in this situation. Another additional job that you can consider is how you respond in that moment, just in terms of keeping the space calm. Making sure that if your child is really escalated, that you don't add to the escalation by being overly loud or engaging in a way that could disrupt the situation, because there may be other people around you at that time. How do you handle a meltdown in public? Yeah, this is impossibly hard. For so many parents, the first thing we want to do is fix it, is to make it better, is to make it go away. And to be absolutely honest, because your child is so emotional and showing something that may in fact feel embarrassing to you as a parent, you're going to be looking around that environment saying, oh my gosh, what are people thinking about me? Remember, you're not responsible for having this behavior happen. This is something that's going on with your child's neurology and in their current skills. Keeping them safe, moving your child physically if you can safely do so if they're a small enough child, and making sure that you're trying not to contribute by being overly loud or bringing more sensory challenge to the situation. If patterns of meltdowns keep happening as well, don't be afraid to go out and seek counseling or therapy to help you and your child navigate this and to escape some of these situations before they occur. And by the way, if homework time leads to meltdowns in your home, you're definitely not alone. Share your experiences in the comments to help other parents who might be going through the same thing as you. Should you ignore a meltdown? This is really important because so much of what we're taught in parenting is that when our child is doing something inappropriate, that we ignore it. Most of that advice is really based on dealing with tantrums. Ignoring a behavior that the child wants your attention for is something that is really helpful and is something that we try to do when we're doing a parenting strategy. A meltdown is an explosion, an emotional reaction. You are not going to make it go away by ignoring it. And in fact, it can make things more dangerous. So be present with your child, keep them safe, move them if you need to, but do not ignore a meltdown. Really, the best way to know the difference between the two is some of your previous experience. You know that if you give your child a certain amount of attention or you take something away from them, that they're going to respond and change their behavior. That's how you know it's a tantrum. In a meltdown, it's usually pretty clear that whatever you're doing isn't affecting your child, so ignoring them is not something you should do. What is an extinction burst? So this is really good psychobabble, and this is something we teach a lot in intro to psych classes. As parents, we need to learn that this is really the concept of anytime you try to help change your child's behavior, it'll often get worse before it gets better. So let me explain how that happens. If you're bringing your child through the checkout line at the supermarket, and every time you go through, they start to yell and scream until they get a candy bar. Every time you give them a candy bar, that's a reward. If you suddenly take that away, they're not going to stop acting out. They're going to increase their behavior and increase it a lot until they see whether or not you're going to hold on and do what you're supposed to do. This is a terrible situation because for parents, it stinks, it's horrible, and it's torture. But if you stick to your strategy, the behavior very commonly comes down very quickly, but it will get worse before it gets better. How do I keep my cool when my child is having a meltdown? One of the hardest things to manage when we're talking about meltdowns is it always feels like there's nothing we can do. Well, in actuality, one of the most important things we can do is look for the signs of meltdowns before they occur. Learning the signs of how your child may be escalating, the things that may be triggering them, and trying to create situations where they can learn new skills before they get to that point is ultimately our goal. As parents, when they finally get to that point of melting down, we feel so helpless. It makes it so challenging. So keeping in mind that as we learn to look at some of the precursors, meaning what happens beforehand, and getting some ways around tantrums and meltdowns can be incredibly helpful. So when you feel helpless, keep in mind, there are some things that you can do in creating some of those strategies for understanding what happens beforehand. It's really hard, but it's something you can do over time. Did you like this video? Because we have a lot more resources like these on our channel. So go ahead and subscribe to get the latest research and tips from experts like me on learning and thinking differences, including ADHD and dyslexia. Thanks for watching.